Top issue for our small business owners. According to our latest CNBC SurveyMonkey Small Business Confidence Index, only 1 in 4 now say that inflation has peaked. That's down from nearly a third last quarter. Meanwhile, 3/4 say they still expect inflation to continue to rise. That's also up from 69% last quarter. More than 1 in 3 said that inflation is their biggest threat to business right now. That is 3 times as many who say consumer demand, labor shortages, supply chain, or interest rates are their top threats to business.
Happy Bitcoin Tuesday, freaks. It's your host, Odell, here for another Citadel Dispatch, the interactive live show focused on actual Bitcoin and freedom tech discussion. That intro was completely unrelated to the show, as always, but will make a great timestamp in the future. People are waking up to the fact that their money fucking sucks and that inflation will probably spread. It's pretty crazy watching normies kind of come to that conclusion. And we live in the unfortunate or fortunate position where we kind of observe that from afar and see it unfold. But I have a great guest here today, Mr. Jeffg, Noster contributor, and recently has been focused on making our DMs better. How's it going, Jeff?
He's going great. Thanks for having me on. It's kind of long-time listener, first-time caller sort of situation, so it's great.
Let's fucking go. So Jeff, I don't know where we should start. I kind of like starting with why Noster. Like, why do you even care about Noster? Like, time is scarce. Time is probably the only thing more scarce than Bitcoin. Why are you so focused on Noster?
Yeah, so I found Noster, kind of shortly after the kind of Jack announcement, giving away a bunch of Bitcoin to Fiat Jaff. And I remember seeing it and kind of going, okay, that looks really interesting. Like look into that a bit later. At the time, though, I was actually in the middle of shutting down kind of more traditional Web 2 startup that I'd started, a couple of years prior, and just for having run out of money. And so I was like, okay, we come back to this, but certainly not right now. So about a month later, kind of mid-January last year, I started looking into it, and I spent the first couple of days kind of just digging through everything, tried to build a real simple little client, got everything set up, and then like I had this little, like splinter in my mind sort of situation where it was like, there's something here that like doesn't like sort of making my spidey sense tingle. And like the more I dug into it, the more I was like, no, I must be missing. Like this is huge. Like this is going to be absolutely the entire internet all over again. And then I was like, no, I must be missing something. Like that's insane. And so I started looking around for people I could like, call and go, hey, you're another developer. Like, what do you think of this thing? And one of the very first people I found was Pablo. And so I jumped on the phone with Pablo, and it was supposed to be like a 20-minute call or something. And an hour and 45 minutes later, having both like yelled ourselves hoarse at each other in excitement, we were both like, okay, so you're seeing the same thing? Okay, we're not crazy. Okay, well, at least we're the same crazy, if nothing else. So at that point, it was like, this is definitely going to be a huge thing, and no one can see it yet. And so I just happened to be in that transition period where I was starting to go, what am I going to do next? And it was just like, this is definitely what I'm going to do next. So I just jumped straight in and started building stuff full time.
Badass. I mean, Pablo's a fucking legend.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. We've got like a ton of weird coincidence things. He spent a bunch of time in Blacksburg, Virginia, where I went to university, and we both climb. And so there was like all these little things where it was like, wait, what? How? Okay, but you're from Argentina and I'm from Virginia, and this is so strange.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah,
freaks. I mean, I see in the live chat there was a little bit of technical difficulties. So the title that you might see on YouTube is incorrect. We're with Jeff. We are not with Ben Ark of last week. But I do appreciate the people who joined us last week.
The Ben Ark episode was good as well. So
did you
if haven't
listen to
watched
that?
it- yeah. If you haven't listened to it, definitely go listen to it.
It was my first public socialism argument that I've ever had, but besides that, I enjoyed it thoroughly.
I feel like that is probably the right person to have that first public argument with.
It had to be done, right? It had to be done.
Had to be done.
I appreciate Ben. He's a great person, and a great contributor. So Jeff, a lot of your focus has been on the actual name of this episode is No Privacy, No Freedom. And I would go further and I would say no privacy, no freedom, no wealth. I think people that are focused on just being as wealthy as possible don't realize the connection between, first of all, freedom, and then the connection down the line of privacy in terms of freedom. So a lot of your focus on Noster has been on the privacy side, and I really want to talk about your new DM spec for Noster. So right now, the way Noster DMs work, they are encrypted, but they're encrypted with your single public key that is known to the world. So anyone who has that public key, which is everyone, can just like sign into a Noster client, see exactly who you messaged, and how often you message them. And then the secondary issue is if that private key ever gets exposed of either participant, then the entire message history is also exposed, which is just bad. That's not
Really bad. Yeah.
to the point where I noticed you do the same exact thing I do. Whereas as soon as you receive a DM on Noster, you just send a Signal link. It's like message me on Signal, which is 100% what I do as well. So how
Right.
are we solving that? And by we, I mean you. Like, what is the plan here?
Yeah.
What are we looking at?
I guess before I jump into that, like I'll go back just a little bit to your like earlier statement, without privacy, you can't have freedom. Without freedom, you can't have wealth. That actually was something that stuck with me really early. I got my hands on a copy of like Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was a kid. And like the only takeaway I took away from that was like, actually wealth is being able to do whatever you want, whenever you want to do it. And like nothing else matters. And so I think like that sort of has always been in my head. And I think it's a huge part of why I'm really into Bitcoin and then really into Noster and like why I'm not out trying to start another Web2 startup and, do things like that. Right. Like I'd much rather spend my time building this sort of stuff. With DMs, so yeah, it's kind of always been a known issue, right? Like even from the very beginning, it was just like, yes, this was a very naive, simple way to encrypt content. When Fiat Jaff wrote the original spec, it was never meant to be perfect. It was never advertised as being perfect by any stretch. And like people wrote some like funny little bots and things that would just report on like who's DMing who, because like you said, you could see all the metadata about, what those conversations were. The NIPO 4 spec as well, which is the original DM spec, like the encryption it uses is like a pretty simple, asymmetric key cryptography. Like it doesn't try to hide how long the message is. It doesn't really do anything fancy around, trying to make that encryption super strong. It's literally just like, okay, just, do one pass on it and then, stick it in the content and it's good. So, knowing that we always had this problem, a lot of people have, one, talked about this, and two, there was a group kind of last autumn that took on, just trying to improve the encryption algorithm that we were using. So they built out NIP44, which is a much stronger like encryption for the actual message content. But that actually doesn't talk about at all, okay, how do you use that encryption scheme with something else to make DMs more private and actually hide the metadata and make sure that, content can't be seen, like you said, if someone gets a hold of your private key or your,
Right.
The other person in the conversation's private key. So that was kind of a big step forward in the sense that, okay, we've got this much better way to encrypt things, but then again, there weren't really any strong contenders for how to do, properly private DMs. There was one that actually was merged just like a couple of weeks ago. Maybe it was last week, in fact, like NIP17, which Vitor from Amethyst put out there. And that actually uses the newer, stronger encryption and uses gift wraps, which, is basically just a way to put an event inside of another event inside of another event so that it hides all that metadata. The problem there still is if you lose one of the keys, everybody can read, going forward and going backwards in time, all the messages between two people.
And people don't realize how bad that is.
Yeah. I mean,
It's like if an individual participant is compromised at any time in the future,
right.
the malicious
And
actor has everything.
everything. And if the malicious actor gets that private key without anybody realizing, they can just quietly read everything going forward into the future forever as well.
And
Like they don't.
backwards into the past, however long.
Right. Right. You have no idea if that has actually happened to anybody's keys. You know what I mean? Like there's no way to know that for sure. So I think we take it, like we kind of take for granted at this point that like most messaging is end-to-end encrypted. And the way that was mostly handled is because we've had these centralized parties, which, we're just kind of trusting that, like, yes, they're using the, right encryption. And for the most part, they're all using Signal's encryption algorithm. The guys that built the Signal protocol ended up, basically selling or licensing that to Facebook and Google, and like all the other services started using a variant of that same protocol. So that was basically what I kept hearing, okay, we need to fix DMs. And I kept going, okay, somebody smarter than me is going to figure this out. Like, this is not, this is above my pay grade. Like, I'm not a cryptographer. I'm mostly a web developer, client developer. And so I was just like, somebody will solve this. This is like, soon we'll have a fix. And it kept not happening. It kept not happening. And I kept listening to the, Bitcoin Review podcast, and kept listening to NVK, moaning about it and like saying we need, double ratchet DMs.
I was just on that.
Yeah. Well, he probably didn't hopefully mention it this week. But
He did.
Oh, did he? Okay.
No.
Well, it's still not out there merged yet. So I suppose he can still moan about it. But yeah, it was like one of those things. I was listening to the podcast on a run, 2 weeks ago, and was just like, for God's sakes, like somebody needs to sort this out already. And so I got home from the run and was like, I'm going to look into this, like how hard is Signal? Like everybody just keeps saying you need a centralized server in order for it to work. Like there's no way to do it on Noster, but no one's given me like an actual real, run through that makes sense. So I just started looking at the Signal docs and started peeling it apart and going, okay, how does this work? How does this piece work? Where is the actual central server really required here? And like, can we adapt it a bit to make it work on Noster? And turns out it's actually completely possible and actually not even that hard. Syncing devices gets a lot more complicated, but for a DM spec that actually does properly encrypt between two parties, the double ratchet DM is absolutely possible. And so that's what the spec that I wrote, a couple of weeks ago was about.
So you actually decided to be the change you wanted to see in the world.
Exactly. Someone had to do it finally to get NVK to stop talking about it. So it turned out it was going to be me.
Who would have thought?
In fairness, actually, like it was one of those things that's like pretty above my pay grade. Like some of the cryptography stuff in there took me a little while to get my head around. I had definitely a couple of great conversations with folks like Pablo and Max Hillebrand about, how the pieces fit together and stuff. And once you kind of crack it in your head and you understand how the thing moves like a machine, then all of a sudden it makes sense. But if you try to just look at it on the surface, it is quite complicated.
So, I mean, let's talk about this. A big issue you mentioned. So the end goal is DMs that no one can easily see the metadata for, right? So they can't easily see how often I'm messaging, who I'm messaging.
Yep.
And then also that if my key gets compromised, they can't see past conversations, correct?
Or future conversations. Okay. So there were kind of three main things that I had in mind, and it was basically those three things. It's like, one, all the metadata has to be hidden. That was pretty well figured out with gift wraps already. So that part wasn't so difficult. You just had to sort of be aware of where you were, putting data and make sure that you weren't accidentally leaving something out in the open. The forward secrecy is very badly named, but like forward secrecy is being able to read stuff into the past. So if you leak a key, if somebody can read all your past messages, that's forward secret compromise. post-compromise secrecy is when somebody gets your key and then they can read messages into the future.
Okay.
And so
That's confusing.
what I wanted was basically both of those things to be solved, as well as the metadata to be hidden.
Forward secrecy is actually for the past.
Yes. Yeah, it's a terrible name. Like the convention is, I don't know why it's like that, but yeah.
Okay. So it's supposed to accomplish all of these things.
Yes, and the way it does it is by basically using one of Noster's superpowers to me, which is like we've got an almost infinite number space for public-private key pairs. And so
Right.
it doesn't matter that we can just like, we could basically use as many key pairs as we want and just throw them away as we please. And we're never going to run out of key pairs. And so the way we do this for this protocol is with some really fun clever cryptography called a Diffie-Hellman key exchange, which basically is a cool way to say if we know each other's public keys, we can come up with a shared secret without having to do anything else, without having to have a third number involved or anything. So you use kind of a combination of Diffie-Hellman plus a bunch of ephemeral keys, and you create a machine that has basically three separate chains of keys. And those three sets of keys, that forms the double ratchet. One set of keys is sort of run off of one ratchet, or two of the chains is run off of one ratchet, and the one main chain is on another ratchet that's totally separate. And those ratchets, one is for forward secrecy and one is for post-compromise secrecy.
Okay. So you actually were able to try and accomplish this problem because you had so much previous work that you were able to build on top of.
Yes,
that
there
made
is
this
there is
possible.
I will be very quick to point out, I did nothing new here that was of
Right.
any supreme difficulty. I just went, okay, how does the signal protocol work? How does Noster work? How can these things work together in a way that, accomplishes these goals? And I think most of the people that had, gone around saying oh, you can't use the signal protocol because it needs a centralized server had never really looked into it. And it turns out, yes, you've got to tweak a few things and it gets a little more complicated for sure, but it's no new cryptography or anything super difficult there.
I mean, it helps that now we have Noster, so you have a open, permissionless, interoperable comms protocol to actually handle the key exchange and stuff like that, right?
Exactly. And actually the identity system is one of the main things that Signal, their centralized server is there for, is to serve as the sort of source of truth for who's who, right? And so that's another thing that just Noster on its own as a network gives us. And so, you're like, okay, don't need a centralized server for that. We know each other's public keys. And so from that starting point, you're already set up, ready, to do this Diffie-Hellman exchange.
Great. So, I mean, to me, there's two main friction points here. I mean, obviously, the first one is actual client adoption. Because, am I correct in assuming that relays don't have to do anything different? So it just comes down to clients actually adding the new standard, correct?
Exactly. Yeah. So relays, this is all just totally standard events. I mean, you want to use auth relays, and you want to make sure that you're using the relays that a user tells you to use, as their inbox relays. But I mean, relays don't have to change anything themselves.
And then the second thing is, so I mean, that's not on you. I mean, hopefully we see client adoption.
Yeah, and one of the things that I instead of just writing the spec, I actually spent probably twice the amount of time, on building a little demo app that would try to show people, each step along the way, what's happening here, so that there was a bit of code that could show people, okay, this is how this thing gets implemented, in the hopes that we can get client developers to implement it faster.
Awesome. But one of the cool parts about Noster is that we have many clients. They're all run by different people, and as a result, they will merge things as they see fit, when they see fit, and these types of upgrades will take a little bit of time, I expect. I think right now, things happen a little bit quicker because there's a dozen people. It's not that many people. It's more than a
Right.
dozen. I mean,
It's more
OpenStats
than
has
a dozen,
funded
but yeah.
21 clients, but it's 45 people. And as a result, it goes a lot quicker. But over time, people should assume with Noster, that these things will take time to roll out across many different clients. And then the second big thing that also, like, I mean, you say this above your pay grade. Like, I feel like this is way above my pay grade. I just want privacy. I want privacy in communications. I want financial privacy. I think humans flourish under that environment. One of the things that seems like a very basic concern with this implementation is, so like if I'm having and I think you kind of mentioned this, if I'm having like a private chat with you on Damus, and then I move to Nostrudel, like what happens with my ephemeral keys? Like, can I actually continue that conversation, or is that a whole new session or something?
This is the tricky part.
Yeah.
This is actually so I got that spec out last week. I kept trying to kind of make the point to people that like, hey, this is, step one of several. We've got a little ways to go before we're going to be ready to like properly implement something that feels like a modern, amazing user experience. Like it feels when you use Signal on your computer and then you pick up your phone and it's all synced up and ready to go.
Right.
The syncing between devices and between clients. So the best way to think about this is, the combination of a device and a client is a session, right?
Right.
So, Damus on your phone, Nostrudel on your computer, Primal on your phone, those are 3 different sessions.
Okay.
And so that's sort of the atomic unit that you have to keep synced here. The way that the keys work is that you're not actually using your Noster private keys to encrypt anything here. The only thing you use those for at the very beginning is this initial Diffie-Hellman key exchange that gets you a shared secret key. And that shared secret key is sort of the, first input to the ratchet machine. You stuff the token in the very top, you turn the ratchet, and then you turn the other ratchet once. Actually, you turn the other ratchet twice, and then you're ready to go. Every time you introduce a new device client, a new session, you need to set that whole thing up again. Okay. Now, that only takes a fraction of a second to set up, as a computer, but it does mean that each of those device client combos needs to keep track of its own set of keys. And that's where all of the kind of security in this comes from, is that you use the keys, you decrypt the messages, you throw the keys away. They're sort of zeroed out, like you don't want them anymore. And in kind of a weird quirk, there's actually potentially a reason that you would want to publicly publish those private keys, those message keys later on. Because once you've decrypted the message, you want to re-encrypt it on the device in a different way. Now, I don't think we're there because like obviously stuff gets kept around on relays for a long time in a lot of cases. So we're not there yet, but there is some like weird stuff you can do that feels really wrong, but actually increases privacy and deniability over the long term. But there's a bunch of preconditions. So anyways, yes, the syncing part is the hardest part by far. And so what's going to have to happen is that basically your conversation will get broadcast to multiple sessions, and each of those sessions will have their own sort of inbox, and each of those sessions will handle decrypting that conversation and managing the content of that conversation separately. And so there is duplication there. There's chance for stuff to get kind of lost or messages to arrive out of order. This protocol handles all that stuff just fine. Like it will handle out of order messages. It'll handle missing messages just fine. But that sort of thing does make it very complicated for developers to put together. It's a lot of moving parts.
Well, I mean, I think if we think about it from like a user perspective, like most users probably will not be using separate sessions. They might be. So am I correct that if I'm using like Primal on desktop and Primal on phone, those are 2 different sessions?
Yes.
That's probably going to happen all the fucking time.
Yes. Yeah, there's going to be some weirdness here. And like, it's sort of like when you use session on desktop and phone, right? Like you don't get your past conversation history when you sync up to desktop, the first time. You're just like, okay, I've got a brand new thread here, and it just kind of starts in the middle. And then 2 days later, you've kind of forgotten that was ever a problem because they're in sync and you've got history on both sides. But yeah, like you don't get to sync up past conversation history in a model like this because we don't have a centralized server.
But future would be the same.
Yeah, as you go forward, basically. So the way this would work is, say you've got Primal on desktop, Primal on your phone, and I'm using Damus, and I send you a message in the conversation on Damus. Damus knows, based on, some mechanism, which is what I'm still working on, but knows based on some mechanism, that you have these two sessions running, and it needs to send an encrypted version to both of those sessions.
Okay.
And so it basically just takes the exact same message, encrypts it, using the keys that it knows, belong to each of those sessions, and then sends, two events instead of one. And your inbox relays pick those up and know which one is for which.
Right. Okay. And the
So-
reason I use Primal as the example is just because I'm aware that they have a desktop and a mobile app. It is not specifically focused on Primal. It was just the easiest example I could think of. I see Manimi, M-anime is actually probably how I'm supposed to pronounce it. Sometimes one client has trouble syncing when another doesn't. This is why people may switch sessions. I do think like right now we're in the glory days of Noster. Like people will look back and like maybe there'll be like a sitcom about like the early days of Noster and like everyone will be wearing like vibrant clothing and whatnot. Like we see with the 80s sitcoms now. But I think in the future, and one of the beauties of Noster, and will continue to be one of the beauties of Noster, one of the key fundamentals is that you can switch clients. Like I think that is a core foundational element, and people should shun any kind of app or client, but I call it an app that doesn't give you access to your NSEC, so you can't easily switch. But I do think that we are rare, and we will continue to be more and more rare. This idea of the user, the active user, who is using 6 different clients, right? Like I use all these different
Right.
clients. Like we're not going to be when we onboard a billion people to Noster, the overwhelming majority of them aren't going to be using a shit ton of different clients.
No.
So I don't know if this is necessarily a problem that needs to be solved. But it is a pain point in this kind of spec, right?
Right. And look, I think I totally agree with you. Like we are the definition of early adopters here. Like we're
Yeah.
the ones that want to tinker with as many possible things as possible. We want to be switching constantly between clients. We're actually not even that bothered when like something goes totally wrong and it nukes our relay list. Like it's just like, oh, well, that was annoying, but whatever, it's
Yeah,
fine.
the follow list is a big one for me.
Yeah, the follow list is a bit more
follow
painful to
list
fix.
nuked so many times.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess like, yeah, I think it's probably fair to say that, the people that come later will not be switching clients quite so much, but also they're just going to expect stuff to work, and they're not going to understand why there's like a weird limitation or stuff goes a bit slower or, stuff doesn't sync. Whereas I think we generally early adopters have this mindset of like, like you're expecting things to be a little bit rough around the edges. So I think the syncing thing needs to work, at least to the degree that, is easily explainable to folks. So like when you sync up to, another client and there's no chat history, it's easy to explain to somebody that like, hey, the reason is because it's so secure. Like they're, like
Right.
we're really not sharing data between these two devices.
We just
So
care
the
about
device
privacy, so
exactly.
you can't see the shit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think the other thing is like, I mean, we're getting a little bit away from it in some senses, but like I want Noster to be an array of things, right? Like I don't want to have every single client have to implement DMs. I don't think that's a really unnecessary thing. And I think it's totally fine that like I really only use Signal for messaging with people, and like it doesn't have to be my social client as well.
Right.
And so I don't think it's weird that we would say, okay, the client that does DMs in the most incredible way possible and handles all the syncing and all the edge cases is going to win in that realm. And then the social clients might like do a little bit of that, but like
I
they
like
won't
that.
handle multi-device or something
Like
like
we
that.
might have like a DM client, like that is the client that like 95% of users use for DMs,
Right.
but they
I mean,
don't
that's my
actually
base
use
case.
it for their like Twitter competitor or their Instagram competitor or whatever.
Yeah. Like I think that would probably be the much better outcome, because it also means that, the people who are focused on building that app are solving that problem completely. Like
Right.
what we don't want is a bunch of apps that do like half of the job for users. Like we want the job like properly solved. And especially in a case like this where, this sort of client, with this sort of security requirement, or at least proposed security requirement, like should be capable of, being the messenger in really hostile situations where you've got maybe activists and, authoritarian regimes where this is how they're organizing. And if they get caught, like they could actually die.
Yeah, and their whole families get thrown in jail and shit like that.
Right. So like
Bad shit.
you would want the people building that client to be like completely deep into that, problem space.
So I'm kind of curious. Okay, I think this DM spec is fucking awesome, and we need it. I don't know how long we need to actually talk about it on the show.
I think we've done it.
Have
We've
we
definitely
done
got
it?
like, I guess the main thing is that it's still a little ways out. Like there's, people are starting to tinker with implementations. Anybody that's wanting to do some implementation, like please reach out to me. I'm more than happy to walk through all the, nitty gritty details. I'm going to definitely build a bunch of kind of the low level stuff into NDK so that it's much easier for client devs to do this
Awesome.
without, screwing it up. But like more than happy to talk to folks about it. And, there's a couple of like small pieces that we need to keep working on and get, kind of pushed further along before it's really ready.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your service. I would like to see this implemented in as many clients as possible, because right now I literally just use DMs to respond back, message me on Signal,
Right.
which clearly you do as well. And I think it's important, like it is, which is why the original NIP for DMs exists in the first place. It was like, you can't compete with Twitter if you don't have DMs. Like there's
Right.
actually, like one of the things I lost when I deleted Twitter was like, I had this global address book of people I could message.
Yeah.
And hopefully Noster eventually replaces that, but it hasn't yet.
Right.
And I just straight up sacrificed it by burning it and just saying fuck all and
Yeah.
let's fucking do this thing. I think there is a strong argument about just burning the bridges and just forcing yourself to improve, which is why I personally did it, and everyone can make their own decision.
Yeah. I'm kind of with that. I definitely sympathize with it. There was like a thing that the 37 Signals guys said years ago where they like don't track feature requests for their products. They just, answer the questions, and the questions that just keep coming back are the ones that then become top of mind. And they know,
There you go.
without having to track anything or look up anything, that like, okay, this is what generally our customers are really asking us for.
There you go. Okay, so I would like to see this DM spec moved along. I think Nostra DMs are a major pain point right now. And it's not even really a pain point to adoption. It's just a pain point of users that are actively using the protocol, whatever 20,000 of us, 30,000 of us that are using it.
Right.
Because the new users actually don't realize that they're shitty.
Right.
The new
Which is
users
the
are
more
just,
dangerous bit.
yeah, I mean, it sucks for them. Like, it's really fucked up. And especially if they're like just uploading image links and they don't even realize the images are public. That's a whole different ballgame. I mean,
Right.
your spec doesn't even solve that.
No. No,
Your
not at all.
images are somewhere on some server somewhere, and they're
Yeah.
not private.
Yeah. Depending on the client. Yeah, that's totally true. Yeah, for sure. I mean, one thing I would actually suggest for client developers is like NIP 17 was recently merged. It is a huge step up in privacy over NIP 04. It uses the NIP 44 encryption. It uses gift wraps. It's really quite trivial to implement, for client developers. And so like, I would pretty highly suggest that
So
like
what does that solve?
it solves the metadata leakage, and gives you like stronger encryption of the actual content. So it, instead of using your private key to encrypt things, it uses a conversation key, which is sort of a
So
variant.
you create like
Yeah.
a new private key that you both share, right?
Kind of. Yeah, kind of. And so, again, if that leaks, like the conversation is fully
Fucked.
visible to anybody that wants to decrypt it. But at least all of that data is hidden behind this wall of metadata. So it's actually hard for people to tell like who's talking to who. So who should I go and try to attack for this, conversation key? So like, it's definitely not ideal, but it's way better than what we've got. And I think like if you went to the point where, okay, if you're going to wait for, all of the double ratchet stuff to be ready, oh, you can't hear. You're no.
I can hear you. Sorry. Harry
Okay, cool.
is in the studio. Harry Sudak.
I'm just crashing the pod.
Harry Sudak is
What's
in the
up,
studio.
Harry?
What's up, brother?
And he was asking me questions, so I was just answering.
I just thought we
Very
could
good.
use a rotating key.
Yeah, he's asking the questions that you're solving.
Like the same way that Signal has time locked erasure.
Yeah,
you could also just encrypt on the same schedule.
This is literally what we're having a conversation about.
I should be a dev.
You should. Code, you should definitely be a dev. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
I'll expect your comments on the spec.
He says he's waiting for your comments on the spec, Harry.
I'm just pulling requests.
Right. Sorry, this is Bitcoin Park, so we just have like
exactly
great Bitcoiners just walk in, tell me what they want.
Exactly. And, they just stroll in and like give you the answers.
We try and make it happen. So NIP 17, they should implement NIP 17 ASAP, and then after that, let's
like
do
it's
better.
Actually, it's like pretty trivial to like conditionally handle different types of DMs as they come in, right? Like you can see when a message is just encrypted with standard NIP 04 encryption versus it's okay, this is like a NIP 17 DM. We need to do 2 extra steps before we can actually show this message. And so, like a thread between 2 parties could literally be going back and forth between NIP 04 conversation, encryption and NIP 17, depending on what's coming in. But the clients do have to handle it. So like there is a bit of work there.
Right. Okay. Awesome. Yeah, we definitely need better DMs. Like people,
it's coming.
We're improving. We're iterating. It's happening over time.
Takes time. Takes time.
What else are you working on in Noster?
Yeah, so I spend a bunch of my time like playing effectively, like experimenting with weird other stuff clients. I think the one that most people know of is Lister. That was the first thing I started building on Noster once I built like Noster.how, which was like just a basic educational site, very first, because basically signing up and like figuring out the keys and everything and like trying to download Brandly.
That's a great domain.
Yeah, it is a good domain. Actually, it wasn't my domain and it was given to me.
$5 million.
Yeah, Noster.com.
No, Nostra.how. I mean, maybe like 2 million.
Maybe 2. I mean, 1.2 maybe. Like, we should be able to get something
humble
for
1.2.
Right?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so sorry, I interrupted you. You built Nostra.how, Lister. Continue.
Yeah. The next kind of client that I played around with was ostrich.work, which was effectively, it was like the implementation necessary for a spec for classified ads that I wanted. Okay. So NIP 99 is classified ads just in general. And if you squint, like one type of classified ad is a job posting.
Right.
So I built a real simple client for people to post jobs. I'm actually in the middle of kind of tearing that apart and rebuilding it completely. It's like the one client that I, built in a week, have put very little kind of maintenance into, and people still, like, every time I'm at a conference, people come up and they're like, when are we going to have like some better way to do recruiting and find work and like, hire freelancers? And, yeah, it's a problem looking for an answer. And I'm like, I'm the problem stuck in the middle going, I'm doing too many other things as well. Like I don't have time, but it keeps coming back. And so I think I'm going to have to work on it more. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that people really want solved. I mean, I don't think you can ever fully solve it, but Monster.com definitely did not solve it.
Yeah, Indeed didn't either. LinkedIn hasn't done a great job. Like
Fuck LinkedIn, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Jeff, do you have a LinkedIn?
I do still have a LinkedIn.
What the fuck, bro?
I know, man. I know.
Do you have any self-respect?
Yeah.
I've decided.
Apparently, I'm low on dignity.
Instead of shaming people for Twitter, I've just decided that I'm going to go for the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Why? You don't need a LinkedIn.
I don't know. You know what?
I'm
going to delete my LinkedIn after
You don't need a LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'm going to delete my LinkedIn after this.
It is really
I really
worst.
don't use it. It literally sits there.
You can't even like privacy lock it down. Like it's designed to just leak as much information as possible about you.
Yes, it is. It's pretty bad.
I'm going for the low-hanging fruit.
I'm going to delete it. I'm going to get rid of it.
Do you have a Twitter account?
Shaming has worked. I do still have a Twitter account, but I don't have
a TikTok account?
No. Oh God, no. Jesus.
Why?
I'm too old for that.
I'm like, if you have a Twitter account, you should have a TikTok account, because TikTok, you get a bigger audience.
Yeah, and also the Chinese government spying on you.
Yeah, so what? I mean,
I mean,
instead of the U.S. government, right? It's like you're just
yeah, I don't
picking
know at
your
this point,
poison.
actually, which is worse? Maybe it's actually the US. So, I mean, that's a hard call, but yeah.
I mean, it sucks. I love this country. I think America's amazing. The American government can
Yeah.
ruin my life. The CCP, it's a little bit disconnected. Like, I don't know. I do not have a TikTok account. I'm not trying to
Yeah.
justify a TikTok account. But I'm
Don't
saying
do
if
it.
you have a Twitter account, you should probably have a TikTok. If the argument is like to reach more
If the
people,
argument is keep it around, then
you would
yeah.
reach more people that way. Yeah, let's just get rid of the LinkedIn account and we can move on from this conversation.
Yeah, but that means
Uh,
I'm gonna have to build LinkedIn on Noster, and I'm not sure I'm really
Look,
ready to do
we'll
that.
make sure you get a job. You don't have to worry about that.
Okay, I got to build the tools so that I can find a
You're
job
part of
and I
the
can
you're
keep
part of the
working.
family now. We'll get you a job. You don't
Okay, all right.
need to be subservient to your LinkedIn account.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough.
But fuck
It is
LinkedIn,
funny
man.
though, actually. LinkedIn is one of those weird ones because I never really used it at all. But
People use
every
it,
now and
man.
then- yeah, like millions and millions and millions of people use it on a daily basis. And like every time I go on there, I see people that, I would be like, oh yeah, this person would not be at all into this. And they're like posting these long, threads and like giant blog posts and stuff on LinkedIn. And it's just like, what? Okay. Bizarre.
It's a community. I
Yeah.
was at a bar like 4 weeks ago with my baby, because that's what we do now.
That's how you roll. You bring your baby to a bar.
Yeah, you bring the baby. And it was local. It was in Nashville. We were in the bar. And I started talking to these two guys about Bitcoin. And my wife is ride or die Bitcoiner. Super ride or die Bitcoiner. She like eyes them up and down, just immediately rolls her eyes, walks away. And I talked to them for like 30 minutes, 35, 40 minutes, like trying to explain to them like why Bitcoin is what matters. They were like more crypto people. Like they were like
Yeah.
more focused on like all the shit coins and stuff.
Yeah.
And then at the end, they said, so my wife is at this point is like at the far end of the bar, giving me like dirty looks. She's got her
She's
baby.
taking the baby away from
She
you
has
just to make sure the
possession.
baby doesn't listen to it.
She has possession of the baby. And I'm like, I gotta go. I like the time has ended. Our time together has ended. And they say to me, they're like, oh, well, like, we would love to continue this conversation. I was like, oh, do you have Signal? I was like, I'm ready to give them my Signal contact,
Yeah.
which they should be grateful for, that they have direct access
Right.
to me. And they're like, oh, no, we don't have Signal. Do you have LinkedIn? And I was like, holy shit, she was right. And like that, for like a lot of people, like that is their main method of. It's insane. It's crazy.
It is kind of nuts. It is kind of nuts, but I mean, it is what it is. So
Yeah, I guess. But anyway, delete your LinkedIn.
I will. Yeah, I will.
Okay, so you're
I guess I have
building
to keep it around.
You're building a lot of stuff on Noster.
I'm building a lot of stuff. I mean, the other thing that I try and make sure I keep a reasonable amount of time for is working on NDK. Pablo does the vast majority, but I feel like I'm the janitor on NDK, where I kind of go behind him and clean stuff up and
that's cool.
Try and document things and add stuff where it makes sense.
So what is NDK? Let's talk about NDK.
Yeah, so NDK is Nostra Development Kit. It was literally sitting on the plane on the way to Costa Rica last year with Pablo. He's like, yeah, I think I'm just gonna start building a library to help people build stuff on Nostr. And I was like, yeah, definitely. JavaScript sucks. It's easy to mess it up. There's a lot of like low level stuff about handling relay subscriptions and like how do you get events and how do you manage user profile data and that most developers don't want to deal with.
Right.
And so it started just
build
from
shit.
Yeah, exactly. It literally just started from him being like, okay, I've done all this 3 or 4 times for these clients that I've built. Let me just like pull chunks out. And I started doing the same and kind of chucking bits of my apps into NDK. And then we added some Svelte component library stuff so that, you could just like drop in a single component and it would load up an avatar. So it's awesome. I'm like seeing people saying NDK is great. It's making their life easier. That's good. That's basically the gist, is that like it should be it's one of many libraries out there that help developers just work at a higher level and work faster.
Awesome. I mean, I think NDK is like, I mean, I think Pablo is completely underrated, but I think NDK is incredibly underrated. A part of the reason most people don't realize, like, part of the reason that OpenSat's Nostra Fund exists is because NDK needed funding. Like the whole idea that this idea of a Nostra Development Kit, like let's enable Nostra developers to build what they want to build with as little friction as possible. And how do we do that in the most responsible way? And the original idea was that there was going to be like an NDK foundation or whatever.
Right.
And
Remember this.
Yeah. And I came into understanding that this thing was happening, and I was like, we are killing ourselves trying to build OpenSats. Like all this stuff that we've already killed, similar to NDK in that regard.
Yeah.
Like we've already done all the kill yourself part.
Yeah.
Why don't we just have a Noster Fund at OpenSats? And I think that there's not enough appreciation on it. Like NDK is like 1,000 flowers bloom kind of shit.
Yeah, and it's like definitely by no stretch it's the only library out there. Like there's a lot of other libraries out there. Like I have talked at length with Kieran about his like he's like built an entire stack of his own that's like sort of similar but different. I think it's great to have multiple libraries out there that developers can use to build. Again though, like having amazing tools is why like a protocol can actually flourish. Developers come to spaces where it's super easy to build and they can see the output of their effort very, very quickly. And so, I keep threatening this. I've been doing it for months. I should stop saying it out loud, but I kind of do it so that I feel bad about it. And then I will one day go and make more videos. But I made a couple of videos last year, just kind of basics, with NDK. I need to go back and like go through the whole thing and show people again, like, here's how you do the basics, but also like, here's all the other shit that it can do now. Cause it's a lot. Like it covers, like caching things, it handles relays, it handles a ton of the much more complicated remote signing stuff. It's really good. Like it's a really, really helpful library.
Fuck yeah. So I mean, you mentioned Pablo multiple times. Were you part of the Sovereign engineering crew?
No. So I've got a bunch of kids. Yeah, I was
besides LinkedIn, you brought great shame to your family.
So much shame. Yeah, but it's actually really hard to get like, school age kids away in the middle of the school year for 2 full months. So
that's fair.
And a wife that has a job. So it was like one of those things where I went back and forth with Pablo for ages and was just like, dude, I just can't make this work. So I went out to Madeira at the end of Sovereign Engineering and I was with them for the last week, which was probably the best week to be there because like they were all pumped.
I mean, you would say that
stuff. Yeah, of course I would. Yeah.
So what did you think about that? Because I didn't even make it for the last week. So I brought greater shame to my family.
Shame. Yeah. Deep shame. You should fall on your sword.
Yeah. I do it every week, basically.
Yeah. It was really impressive. It was like, so I kind of landed on a Friday. I came straight into demo day. I knew about half the developers in the room, but the other half I'd never met before. The demos were incredible. Just the level that, they had kind of pushed understanding around just like what was possible, what was a good idea, what wasn't a good idea, with sort of what you could do on Noster, was really impressive. And like, in every group, there's like a few ideas that come out of the group that's sort of the standout ideas. And I think those things are going to go on to become really, really impressive projects. But yeah, it was cool. Like, I mean, the whole concept of we're going to go on walks, we're going to spend a bunch of time together, just like hashing stuff out, arguing over things. We're going to build stuff too, but like that's almost the secondary concern because like when we go away to our separate, little offices and corners and whatever, then we can actually build the right stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the first accelerator program in human history that has lost money.
So far,
which is impressive. Yeah, so far. Yeah.
Well, no, but they didn't take any cut on anything. So yeah, no, they've definitely just lost money. That's it.
Yeah, they've just incredibly lost money. And usually they provide money too to the participants. Like the participants
Right.
also lost money. Like they also
Right.
had to pay for travel. But it was probably, as someone who hasn't been there, but as someone who considers both Gigi and Pablo brothers and is grateful for that fact, it could be one of the most substantial, actionable, real change mechanisms in terms of accelerator programs that has ever existed. And every single participant of the program, including the operators, lost money on it, which is insane. And
Yeah.
as someone who prides himself in being a capitalist, pretty crazy to witness unfold. And I will bring it up over and over and over again because I'm grateful, and I it's just crazy that happened.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a full capitalist as well, but like I think there's certain things like that where you just go, well, one, it's proof of work. Two, that is actually low time preference thinking. You're just like, I'm
Yeah.
going to get way more from this than the money matters at this point. And yeah, I think it was it. I would love to see though. Like, I mean, yes, it was incredible. I think obviously having everybody in a place is amazing. Um, I would love to see more programs like that. Like, I would love to see people
Yeah.
just sort of come together and do this kind of almost like okay, how many people can we get in X, island or X, village in the mountains or wherever it is. Let's all just stay in the same place. I've like sussed out the details. Show up and we're gonna, hack on this sort of vague space of ideas.
But you can't shortcut your way there. Like there's
No.
no like money doesn't buy that. I think the whole key is that it was just pure ideology. It was like
Yes.
pure people cared,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
I mean, you mentioned your own flock of children, but like at the end of the day, like if you have children, like you want to see them live in a better place.
Right.
And like it doesn't matter what does it cost time wise or what does it cost monetarily. And none of that fucking matters. And if you solve those problems though, you might not actually have the thing. Like the thing might not actually happen.
Right.
So I don't know if we can. I don't think we can manufacture it. I think it's just one of those beautiful things that's happens.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as someone
It
who
is.
would like to manufacture better things,
Right.
I don't think we can. I think
Yeah.
it's unmanufacturable.
Yeah. There are certain things like that, right? Like, time and place and people matter. I think they matter like a lot more, and they're a lot more serendipitous than a lot of people give them credit for. Um, like, one of the things that I kind of always, think is like sort of, I've been working remotely for more than 15 years. And like, for a long time at the beginning, it was like super weird. No one worked remotely. And then
Right.
over time it's become more and more normal. But, I remember at the
Yeah, now you're
beginning, I was
just a
like, no,
normie.
no. Yeah, exactly. But like it's one of those things that I think in the beginning I was like, no, no, like you can get just as much benefit being remote as being in the place with the other people. And certain things, yes, but actually there's this layer that really is the kind of, I don't know, it's like the thing you can't describe that we've just been talking about, which is, there is some magic of when you get the right people in the right place together and they're all, similarly minded and they're all pushing against the same topic, they are going to come out with something that is exponentially or like surprisingly much better than than the same group would have done, even if they'd been working on the same problem, but not in the same place.
Damn right.
Yeah.
Um,
So yeah, I mean, I love living where I live and I'm like out in the middle of nowhere, but at the same time, it's, I do put
well, you got a lot of
I'm,
guitars over there.
yeah, I do have a couple guitars. They don't get played as much as they should, but I do have some guitars. It's a lot less than I used to have.
I also live kind of in the middle of nowhere, but close enough to Nashville that I get to see a bunch of Bitcoiners.
Right, exactly. And like, you prioritize that time, right? Like you're like, oh no, this is the time that I need to go spend in the place with the people.
It's important to see people in person as much as I just want to like crawl into a hole or not crawl into a hole, but like, just not see anybody. It's important. It's important to be in person with people, shake hands with people, look them in the eyes, argue with them in person, have a few beers, like make the things happen. Like
Yeah.
humanity progresses based on a small group of individuals, like who just decide that they want to make shit happen, and
Yes.
the thing happens.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy. It's crazy how much like we've removed personal responsibility from this world.
Yes. This is the thing that kills me more than anything else, especially about living in
Yeah.
Europe. Like it drives me mad.
No, I didn't know you were in Europe, but okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk.
We've been in like Northern Italy for 14, 15
Okay,
years.
so Madeiro's kind of close to you, bro.
Ish. Still like 4.5 hour
Yeah,
flight.
it's closer than Nashville.
Only marginally though. Like
Yeah.
not much.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to individuals. Like that's the crazy part. It's like like the one thing I would want to impress on as many people as possible is that you can change the fucking world.
Yes.
Like
all
a
progress
single,
happens at the margin.
Yeah, this whole idea that like you raise kids, you're like, oh, like you can do anything you want to be. Like that is probably bullshit. But individuals do change the world. It happens constantly.
Yes.
It comes down to single people, groups of people, 5, 6, 10 people, 15 people, you change the world. And you just got to keep pushing forward and like make that actually fucking happen.
Right. And pick the right thing to work on. Right.
Yeah.
Because like, wouldn't
And
it be
not
crappy
have
to
a
be
LinkedIn.
and not have a LinkedIn? Yeah. Don't get distracted with LinkedIn or TikTok or blue checks.
I love, by the way, Harry's listening to this episode now. He's over
listening.
He's over on he's put his headphones in so he can actually hear what we're talking about.
Excellent. Harry's a good example, actually. So like I was hanging out with Harry there just like a month and a little bit ago, and like that whole crew, and it was awesome. Like, you know, it's one of those like highlights of being able to go to these, you know, Bitcoin events, meet a bunch of people and go, I know your voice from a bunch of podcasts. Now I know you. And we've hung out and we've like done stuff together. So I think.
Wait, what event did you meet Harry at?
At Cheat Code in the UK.
Oh, I probably should have went to Cheat Code.
Yeah, you probably should have. It was fun.
Yeah.
Bedford was sick.
He's listening. Bedford was sick.
The Paris of the UK.
Yeah. Well, I sent Harry. Harry was my.
Oh, was he your designated conference goer?
I sent my diplomat. We kind of met each other through Harry.
Kind of. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Well, one day we'll meet each other. I honestly like. There's too many conferences.
There are too many conferences now. And I was saying, I actually really love the conferences. Yeah, I'm like a bit of a binary type of person though. Like I need to go to the conferences and like meet all the people and stay up all night long and like not sleep at all. But then I need to come home and work for a month quietly by myself in my attic, and that's it.
Yeah. No, I mean I agree. But I went through that phase already. Like I did a lot of events. I've done too many events. Yeah, I mean, I do not want to be an influencer. I do not want to be a celebrity. Like I like kind of stumbled into this position, and I just care about freedom. Like I just want people to have freedom. Jeff, I have you here. You know your shit. You're involved with Noster. I have put the call out that I will go on any show that wants to ask me hard questions. They don't exist, unfortunately, which is why Civil Dispatch exists. Live, unedited.
No shows with hard questions? None?
Do you know one?
I haven't thought about that, but let me think. No.
It's pretty sad.
I mean, I feel like what's the guy in the black suit? I can never remember his name. I haven't listened to his podcast in a long time.
Fucking suits. I don't know who you're talking about.
You know who I'm talking about? The kind of AI guy who does like the 5-hour podcast with all the super
Lex
famous
Friedman?
people. Yes, Lex Friedman.
He doesn't ask hard questions.
No, I know. My point is that he had the possibility of being the person that would ask the hard questions.
But he's not that person.
I feel like he blew it.
He doesn't.
Yeah, he blew the opportunity.
Yeah,
You're now just
okay,
kind of
well,
like,
because
I don't
it's
know, like
easier to take the sponsor that will pay you the most, and you'll just say the things, and you make everything edited and super polished, and you don't do the fucking hard questions. So Jeff,
yeah, yes.
you're active in the Nostra community. I have respect for you. Do you have any hard questions for me? Like, do you have any hard questions? I think I'm going to make this a reoccurring segment on Dispatch. You're the first. So
Oh,
I'm
wow.
sorry for putting you
You
on the
sprung it
spot.
on me. Okay.
But if you have hard questions for me, and I'll actually do you a favor and I'll prime your questions.
Okay.
OpenSats. Do you have issues with OpenSats? Primal 1031 is a major investor in Primal. We are the largest investor in Primal.
Yes.
We're the largest investor in Mutiny Wallet, and 34 other Bitcoin companies. Do you have
Yes.
any hard questions for me?
So
And
I'm gonna talk
I
about
know
something
you're
first.
an
I'm gonna talk about that for
OpenSats.
a moment. Yeah.
I know you're an OpenSats grantee. Just know
Yes.
I will still approve any grants
I
that
get the
come in.
blanket stamp of approval. It's like,
No. You
no,
do
no, no.
not get a blanket stamp approval
Of
because
course
that's
not. Of
also
course not.
bad. That's also
Yes.
bad.
No.
But your proof of
Look,
work has shown that you should get an approval. So you
okay.
will still get
Here's
approval because
the
I
thing.
just care
Here's the
about
thing.
proof of
So
work.
while I think about a hard question, I'm gonna actually just talk about that whole thing because I actually don't think that's a hard question at all.
What?
The whole thing about OpenSats and 1031 and Primal and conflicts of interest and things like that, right? Like I think all of these things are nuanced, and I think humans in general, especially on social media, are very, very, very bad at nuance, and they're very bad at understanding that, like, situations and people, like the people are the messy bit, and it's not like it's most of the time not some sort of system that's against them, right? Like even when I think about Janet Yellen and Liz Warren and like all these, we'll leave all the words out, but I kind of think, no, this is just a really, really bad, gigantic set of incentives that have gone on for so long that they don't even see most of it anymore. And so all of that is just a really complex system that has spit out these really bad externalities. Now, like, I think the only question here is like OpenSats, amazing. Like OpenSats is one of the most incredible resources that Bitcoin and Noster has, right? Along with Spiral, along with Brink, along with, other systems that provide, kind of no strings attached developer support. Like that's incredibly rare. And I think like if anybody looks anywhere else around any other kind of space in the world, you'd be hard pressed to find a more sort of, like ideologically aligned and incentivized group of nonprofits that like do great work and don't take a cut off the top and don't, like they're very,
okay.
I just
First
think
of
like
all,
it's a
fuck
big
you
board
for the
Yeah.
Janet Yellen comparison.
Well, I didn't say you were Janet Yellen. I mean, you're probably taller than her.
I mean, I think Janet Yellen is, I mean, who knows? I'm quite short, but full disclosure. But I think Janet Yellen is malicious. But I that's just my own personal opinion. I don't think there's any nuance needed there. I think she is like she's got the Cantillionaire, like Cantillion effect,
drinking from the spigot,
straight from the spigot.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
I think she's a bad actor. And but you could argue that the incentives enable that.
Yes.
Which is the incentive
I think they
is
became
that the
bad
spigot
actors.
exists.
Yeah, I think they became bad actors because of the incentives.
Yeah.
Like very few people go through the world being like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go, totally screw those people over there. Right. Like if I didn't believe that, I think I would be like fully depressed all the time. Right. Like you kind of have to just kind of go through life and be like, most people are trying their best. It drives me mad that most people aren't capable of doing better, but like that is kind of what it is.
Yeah, most people are just like in their hole and they just don't realize what's going on for the most part, and they actually think they're doing well. Like
right, and back to the personal responsibility thing. Most people don't actually want to take responsibility. They don't want to make the decisions. They don't want to have to make hard choices, and so they would actually just rather be told, if you do A, B, and C, then like you'll be pretty much fine. And as long as that contract mostly works out, like honestly, unfortunately, from my point of view, like that's what most people want.
So you have no complaints about OpenSats?
I mean, my experience has been incredible. Like, one, obviously I'm a grant recipient, so like I have a dog in this horse or a race, whatever it is, horse in this race. But like, at no point has OpenSats ever tried to like nudge me one way or the other. In fact, it'd probably
You don't
be
have the
better if OpenSats.
resources. Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. Like, it'd probably be better if OpenSats was a little bit more like hands-on and pushy about, their opinions. But, I think you guys have, set it up in a way as best you possibly can to make it uncorruptible. Like, there's a bunch of people that are board members that
Corruption
aren't being
resistant
paid.
is what I
Corruption
prefer.
resistant. Yeah, exactly.
Nothing is
Done as
uncorruptible.
Okay. Corruption resistant. I think everybody's been super transparent about how the whole thing works. I think obviously it's really hard when you get a ton of grant applications to actually sift through them and go, okay, what are our, what are the criteria that we judge these things based on? And I think for the most part, this last year has been you guys trying to figure out like, what is our actual system here? So it's been a little bit all.
Gigi told me that I act too often. So we do ACNAC. Everything is GitHub issue based.
Mhm.
And I'm like way too fluid with giving out the money. Like because I figure like the whole point of OpenSats is that we're supposed to review it over time. Right?
Yes.
So like if
Yes.
I accidentally give someone $50K for the year and we give out larger grants than that, but if we give out someone $50K for the year and they don't actually hold up their end of the bargain, and one of the beautiful parts about open source software is that there's true proof of work. Like you see a record of what commits happen and what happens.
Right.
I don't think that's like the biggest negative in the world. Like that's fine. It's
Well,
like, okay, I'm sorry that we lost
Yeah.
that money. Like it could have went to a better developer. That does suck. There's opportunity cost there. Money is scarce.
But on the other hand, like, I mean, I don't know for all the grants, but like my understanding is that most of the grants are kind of paid out over time. Like, it's not like you
we
just
do monthly.
Exactly. And so
Isn't that
these
nice?
are not things that are, you lose all the money immediately and then you wait a year to figure out whether it's actually worth it or
we'll
not.
figure it out in a couple months.
Exactly. So, I mean, people are messy. Like, it's really hard to figure those things out. And like, sometimes you do need to take wild bets on projects that look super bizarre and weird. And like, that's exactly what this is for, in my opinion. And so, to be honest, like I've got no gripes with OpenSats. I've got no gripes that there's board members who are also VCs. I happen to have a lot of friends that are VCs. That's you. I just think that like
VC friends.
I have VC friends. Yeah, I know.
Wow.
Some of them are
we're
actually
not
decent
friends
people.
yet, so it's not me. You're not talking about.
It's not you. Yeah. I mean, yeah, but like,
we'll be
some of them are
friends
decent
one day,
people.
hopefully, Jeff.
Maybe
But
one
we're
day.
not
Maybe. We'll see. We got to meet. We got to hang out.
Yeah.
You might ask me for like, my like LinkedIn DMs or something. I don't know.
I would never ask for that. That would be ridiculous.
Okay, I think I have a hard question.
Okay, thank you. I need the hard questions.
Okay, so this is like a little bit of a softball hard question though, because it's like one of those like what if type of things. But then I'll ask you like another hard question that I think is better. But I do have this one because I'm just kind of curious. If there was no Bitcoin, what do you think you'd be doing?
I'm so fucked. I don't know. What do you want my answer to be? I've dedicated my life to this.
Like, literally think about like what else is there out there and where might you have ended up?
My core incentive is that if Bitcoin fails, I'm fucked. Like I have nothing.
Amen.
Yeah. I just hear Harry just said amen.
Yes,
like I have nothing.
I don't want anything.
I just
Bitcoin, I guess it's less about if Bitcoin fails. It's what if Bitcoin never was?
Yeah,
like,
I mean, Bitcoin must succeed. Bitcoin must succeed. I mean, I don't talk about what my previous, but it's relatively unrelated. And it sucked. It fucking sucked. And I was just a wage slave, I was just I was just making money and not really saving much of it. And I mean, I've been in Bitcoin for over a decade now. So Bitcoin is my life. Like
Right.
and then Nostra recently has taken up a larger portion of my life. But I think it's complementary to Bitcoin. Like it's really just
Yeah.
I forget which episode we talked about this in, but I think Noster's like the first Bitcoin child project. Like it's not directly anchored in the blockchain or something
Yes.
like the shitcoiners would say, but
Yep.
like Nostr exists because Bitcoin exists, and it exists because Bitcoiners needed a communication protocol, and so Nostr was made.
Yes.
So Nostr to me is a child project of Bitcoin, and it's a feature, not a bug. Like people say, like oh, like too much Bitcoin conversation happens, or there's too many Bitcoiners. Like it's a feature, not a bug. Like the
Right.
reason we might have a possibility of a chance on a free speech protocol is because of Bitcoiners, because
Yeah.
Bitcoiners exist, because Bitcoiners wanted to see it happen.
Yep. Yep.
But yeah,
Yep.
I've essentially, I say stay humble, stack sats. People should stay humble and stack sats. But like I'm all in, no regrets. Like that's really my lifestyle. It's been my lifestyle for about 7-8 years now.
Yeah.
And if Bitcoin were to fail, me and my family would have to do major rediscovery over what we were supposed to do with our lives, and also how we were going to live our lives. Like I don't really have a clean answer to that. That is a good
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. I have another one. Did
Also,
Harry have a
OpenStash would
question?
be fucked because we just have
Right.
all of our funds are just held in multi-sig Bitcoin. Like we have our treasury strategy is straight up, if you donate fiat, it immediately gets converted to Bitcoin. There's
Which is amazing.
no,
Which is
time
amazing.
the market, anything. It's
No.
just like we just hold it in Bitcoin multi-sig. Because the moment where Jack Dorsey's $21 million goes into a bank account,
Right.
I assume it's lost until it gets to the multi-sig. Right? Like
It's
like we
never
don't actually
showing
have
up.
the funds. Well, like, can you imagine that? Can one of the OpenSats haters out there just imagine $21 million entering into a bank account and trying to get that to Bitcoin? Like that's the scariest fucking 1
Yeah.
week period where until we get it to the multi-sig.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I mean, coming back to that conversation, like I think that for people out there that want to hate, like it's the most, it's the worst way to actually get anything that you want done, right? Like if you've got
What,
a
hating?
legitimate gripe, be positive and optimistic and talk to people in good faith and like point out why you think it's a problem. If you are annoyed that you haven't gotten a grant and you really want one, keep applying. Like I
Yeah,
didn't get
keep
a grant on
applying.
my first application either. So, just apply again and, make your case, show proof of work, like do the legwork. So I don't know, like the whole thing, I've kind of tried to stay out of it, but like, I just find it kind of tiresome because I don't think it really is helpful it's not a good use of anybody's time, basically.
I love that I chose like one of the most optimistic people for my hard
For your first
question.
hard questions.
It
Okay.
was
I have a better
actually
hard question actually for you.
okay.
What is the one thing that you think? It's kind of a two-part question. I hate two-part questions, but I'm going to do
I'm
it
cool
anyways.
with it.
All right. What's the one thing that you think is holding Bitcoin and Nostra development back? Like it's slowing it down? And is there something that is it something that we could learn or take from, the shitcoinery that tends to grow very quickly, and tends to get a lot of, I guess, interest overall in the tech community, or just from like tech in general? So, it doesn't have to be shitcoiners, but like, AI or any of the tech stuff that tends to grow, exponentially faster than most Bitcoin and Nostr stuff.
I mean, it's straight up money, man. Like that's why I was a masochist and agreed with Ben Price when he reached out. When Ben reached out to me about OpenSats, he
Mm.
was a complete nobody. Bitcoin company didn't exist. He had a different name. He reached out to me on Keybase because Signals at that point still didn't let you communicate without doxing your phone number. So like Keybase was the main way that people could just reach out to me.
Mm.
And he was like, we need to start OpenSats. And I was like, no, like it's anti-Bitcoin. Like there shouldn't be a middleman. Like people should just donate directly. So then I talked to Dennis Reinman and we built BitcoinDevlist.com and like people could donate directly. No one donated directly. And then I went back to Ben and I was like, okay, fine, I'll do this thing, but please limit my paperwork. Like I don't want to deal with paperwork. And he's done a good job with that. Like he dealt with the majority of paperwork and he deserves massive credit for that. And he also deserves massive credit for the idea of 100% pass-through organization.
Yeah.
Because I would be lying if I didn't say like, oh, well, what if we took like a humble 3%,
Right.
for our troubles, which is significant. Like we have significant troubles.
Yeah.
And that's how this whole idea of the operations fund got born. But anyway, my point is it really does come down to the money and the support.
Yep.
And as much as we can say like, oh, like that doesn't matter, like open source, like let's do this, let's do that. Like all the shitcoiners have like these massive dev funds that are paid by the foundation that takes the pre-mine, that does the fucking thing. And in Bitcoin, we don't have that liberty. We don't have that. Gratefully, I'm very
Yeah.
grateful. We don't have a
Yes.
pre-mine
Yeah.
that can fund all that shit, right? And this is where you get all this bullshit, right? Where it's like,
Right.
like OpenAI or whatever. Like, oh, we have this dev fund and it's like super easy. You can build apps on top of our surveillance software and you can do this and you can do that. It's not just shitcoins.
Right.
And I think people underestimate the fact that OpenSats is an organization that it's something like that has never existed before. And like we built it from the ground up to try and be as corruption resistant as possible. And we built it from the ground up to be a Bitcoin standard organization. I mean, this whole
Yep.
idea of monthly payouts is insane if you're not doing Bitcoin batch transactions.
Right.
And the idea that an individual board member doesn't have access to the funds because it's multi-sig is fucking groundbreaking. Like it's simple shit. But it's super simple. It's not like I'm not pretending like we reinvented the wheel. We just decided to do the hard thing using simple tech that existed.
Yep.
And I think it does change the game. I think at the end of the day, especially in this regulatory environment, if you look at it, I think people are over indexing on I mean, you're Italian, but most of our audience is American. They're like, oh, the government's coming after self-custody Bitcoin ownership. The US government's coming after self-custody. I really don't think that's the case. I think most self-custody Bitcoin owners are fine. I think the bigger concern would be like future self-custody Bitcoin owners, like try and add friction to
Yes.
own self-custody Bitcoin. So you just end up in an ETF somehow in Coinbase custody.
Yep.
Whether it's an ETF or some other product, it's like you're in Coinbase custody.
Right.
But the bigger issue is that like if you're going to build freedom software, if you're going to build software that enables freedom, you have immense liability if you take a profit off of it. And I think OpenSats kind of like bridges that gap.
Yep.
OpenSats provides a way for people to live. I mean, and one of these things is like people don't realize they're like, oh, it should just only be devs as the board members. Everyone has their complaint about what it should be. But at the end of the day, it's a high pressure position to be in, and I respect that position. Like I respect the fact that people think that my integrity matters, and I agree my integrity matters. Like it does matter. It should matter less because we have 9 board members. That's why we designed it that way. But I guess my point is that to provide no strings attached funding to open source contributors that might not be able to monetize their open source project because then they get thrown in a gulag is incredibly important. And some of these open source contributors that receive grants from OpenSats have better take home pay than I had this year. And I'm cool with that. because first of all, I care about the mission. Second of all, I have a child and I plan to have more, and I want them to live in a better world. And third of all, because that's the only way that it's going to fucking happen. Like, there's no way that it doesn't happen that way. That it's either it happens that way or it doesn't fucking happen. I would love a world where everyone just zaps people directly. Congratulations. There's like 3 people that zap more than me. No one fucking does it.
Right.
Citadel Dispatch has been funded on zaps since before zaps existed. And Lionel Shriver came on the podcast and she got like 3x more than I ever have gotten ever in Citadel Dispatch history. And that is fine. But like, my point is like, I would like there not to be a middleman. I would like there not to be a 9-person board that decides that allocates stuff. I would like the best complaint we haven't really gotten is that open source, OpenSats contributors and HRF contributors and Brink contributors and Spiral contributors all have to submit 1099s and essentially KYC with themselves with the U.S. government. I would prefer if that wasn't the case.
Me
I would
too.
prefer they receive donations directly. We haven't gotten to that point yet.
Right.
So someone has to do the hard shit, and we're
Yep.
doing the hard shit.
Yep.
We're trying to make it happen.
Yep. I mean, I saw somebody's made a point about it's kind of gone in the comments now, but kind of saying growth at all costs is a bad trade. And I think like, yes, 100%. But I guess the point of my question was not necessarily how do we do growth at all costs. I think what we all want is more freedom, and we know that this space has to grow, and we have to get more people to realize that this is normal and okay and reasonable. Like we're never going to convert the entire world to be as psychopathic as we are, right? Because like as we talked about before, it's a small number of people that make things change in the world. But we do have to make this normal to a lot more people so that they don't keep attacking us, right? I am very sympathetic to your point there, right? Like I've worked in a lot of venture funded startups where, you know, the money comes in and it's put to, you know, good or bad use, but it's put to use. And I think, you know, for better or worse, that's the world we live in. Like it costs money to make things happen. And so you need to have a way to, you know, exert that force in the world and, you know, and use that as a, you know, kind of multiplier against, you know, the actual effort that you can expend.
What do you think about, since I feel like you're not asking the hard questions, what do you think about Muni with 2 U's saying non-NIMs are an attack vector?
Wait, mutiny with 2 U's. I'm still confused about this
No,
part.
it's Muni. It's Muni asking. He's not asking. It's not a question. He's just saying non-NIMs are an attack vector. And obviously both me and you have our faces here. Obviously your name is Jeff.
Yeah, look,
my name is Odell.
I go back and forth here. Like one, people can do what they want. Like I'm the last person that is going to stand up and be like, no, people should not have NIMs.
I have NIMs.
Like, but there you go. But like, I think the main point is that we have to operate from where we are now. And we're going to need probably both things, right? We're going to need people that are able to do things that are well outside what's, you know, technically legal. And they can do that because they've got great OPSEC and good NIMs. And we also need people that are doxed and can have the conversations in public and be a little bit, you know, more, I mean, for lack of a better word, a little bit closer to the normal Overton window of what people expect. I think we need both of those things. And so I don't think that it's really a question of like, we must be all on one side or, you know, it's not worthwhile at all. And this is like when people level, you know, all the hate at Primal for KYCing.
Oh yeah.
Like,
let's talk about that.
That's just dumb.
Give me the hard questions.
That's not even a hard question. Like these are like, in my mind, that's just a simple trade-off of like, hey, we want to operate in a space where we're in the fully regulated thing that people are normal, like normies expect. They are not weirded out by this. And we want to make it super, super, super easy. And the only way to do that right now is to do that in a KYC light way. And yes, it's not the client you want to use if you want to be like, you know, a full OPSEC, ninja with your mask up. Like, just pick your tools. Like, I don't know. It just seems like, people missing the point again, where it's like, okay, we have different tools for different things. Like, you don't need to like turn everything in your toolbox into a hammer.
You're the worst person to ask for hard questions, I guess. But
I think I just look at nuance and I'm like, there's a lot, like, there are no solutions. There's only trade-offs. And so, like, you can pick the trade-offs you want, but like, you're never going to get something that's just perfect.
I'm glad I started hard question hour with you, though. I think it's
I rolled the softball to you on the ground.
One thing I would say about the NIMS versus completely exposed individuals, because that's how I would describe myself: completely exposed, which is not great. It's not an ideal situation to be in. I am not asking for people's sympathy. I am asking for their understanding, maybe, or if you're just fucking retarded and you don't want to have that, then fine, that's whatever. But like, just know where I'm coming from. I feel personally completely fucking exposed, and a lot of that was my own fucking choices. Okay, that's where we stand. If you are one of those people, it is imperative that you support the NIMS, that you actually elevate them, that you give them more, a larger audience, because at the end of the day, humans appreciate seeing a person, understanding a person, feeling the person. They want an individual they can recognize and feel like they are friends with. And as a result, the people that are exposed have a greater influence in terms of elevating those that aren't. And I think it's incredibly empowering when you have those people help the NIMS, right? And help out the NIMS. And this is one of the reasons why, like, someone like a Jordan Peterson was so disappointing to me, because you had like this guy who has this massive audience, and not only did he decide not to elevate the NIMS, he decided to pariah the NIMS and like make them out to be this horrible. And it's like, if you're not going to elevate them, then just shut the fuck up. Like, don't do this. Don't do that. The far extreme of the other side.
Yeah. Did you see the TED Talk there recently with Scott Galloway, where he like ripped into TED and basically all the boomers for like ruining their the children's future, basically?
No,
and
I
I was
did
like,
not.
it was really good. It's like, I don't know, whatever, 11-minute TED Talk. And it's like great until the last like 30 seconds when he's like, here are some concrete things we can do. And it was like, only, real identities on the internet. And I was like, oh, I'm lost. Like, you've lost me completely. Like, you had great ideas. You are totally speaking. You are a Bitcoiner. You just don't know it yet. And you screwed up. Because I totally agree with you. Like, I think, again, it's really important that we also, as people that are out there, normalize the fact that it's fine for people to hide their identity. It's not nefarious. It's not something that is dangerous.
It should be the norm. It really should be. Like, people should default to NIMS. And then if they want to be exposed, then they choose to be exposed in the future.
Exactly.
It shouldn't be it shouldn't be the opposite. And it's one of the reasons why the way I built Dispatch is that we're audio first, right? It's like most of the time we don't have video enabled with it. Is because even if you are a person that cares about protecting your face, on most podcasts, like, you're the ostracized person. It's like, oh, it's a random guest that just decided to do it. The norm should be not that. The norm should be not exposing yourself. And especially as we move to this more digital first era, it becomes even more important. And we've actually done the opposite for the most part. And it's been incredibly disappointing.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. It's one of the reasons I keep coming back, is just because if I think someone can do it better than me, I'm just going to let them do it. But no one does. And it's sad. It's sad. I challenge everyone out there build a better OpenSats, build a better 1031, build a better Scylla dispatch, build a better rabbit hole recap. I will listen to your rabbit hole recap. I will listen to your Scylla dispatch. I'll invest in your 1031, and I'll donate to your OpenSats. But no one's fucking done it, and it's frustrating and exhausting. And I'd rather them do it. Jeff, we need to
Yes.
talk about Primal KYC.
Okay, let's do it.
I know you don't want to. I know you think
No,
it's
I don't mind.
fine.
I don't mind.
I don't like it. Okay.
I don't like it either.
yeah.
I don't like it either. But like,
I don't like
again,
it.
It's a trade-off.
And it's definitely a trade-off. I think, first of all, what people don't realize, and I mean, it should be immediately obvious, is as investors with 1031, like, first of all, I'm grateful that I have amazing partners at 1031. Grant, Jonathan, Marty, amazing. And then we have John Arnold, who does everything. He does so much for us, and he's a junior member of 1031. I am probably the most active with our founders out of all of us. And still, like, I don't tell founders what to do. Like, we don't dictate how they operate their businesses. One of the key value props of 1031 is that we're not just like suits entering the room and just decide how you run your business. Like, if you need our help, we are here for you. If you don't want our help, we will fuck off. And then we'll do everything in the middle. Everything in the middle, like you need our help, but want us to fuck off in different situations, we'll fucking do that.
Right.
And I love Milan. I think Milan cares about Noster. I think he cares about freedom. I think he cares about Bitcoin. Milan being the founder of Primal. I don't think Milan wants to attach KYC to npubs. I don't think Milan has like this massive evil agenda. I think he wants more people to use Bitcoin, and I think he wants more people to use Noster. And he finds himself in this regulatory environment where if you're a founder, you're just like stuck with all this liability.
Yes.
And he also wants ease of UX, and Lightning fucking sucks if it's not custodial.
It's tough. Yep.
So we end up in this weird fucking situation where he's doing KYC, and he's doing KYC, but it's like KYC. I mean, it's doing email verification.
It's still KYC, yeah.
But it's still KYC. It's attaching it to npubs. And that fucking sucks. Like, I don't pretend that doesn't. Like, if you think, like, I woke up this morning, I was like, that fucking sucks. Like, that was my first thought this morning. Like, I woke up next to my beautiful wife. Like, I had my 3 dogs. You
are
crowing.
The meme.
You know, yeah. She's like, "What is he thinking about?" I was just like, oh,
exactly.
Fuck, Primal KYC.
Primal KYC.
That's what I woke up thinking about.
Yeah. Yep. This is literally like you just literally spelled out the trade-offs, and like that's being a founder is the hardest job in the world because one, you're doing something that's never been done before, or at least you should be, and two, the buck stops with you, and you are left with a bunch of really hard choices that are basically suck. And I have worked in a bunch of startups. I ran my own startup. I advise founders, and like I've had a bunch of conversations the last week where it was literally like, okay, after the Samurai situation, like, what are you guys thinking? And almost all those conversations are basically the same. It's like, here are 2 really shitty, horrible decisions or paths that we can take. They both suck. They're both horrible. We don't want to do either. We just want to be left the fuck alone so we can build this really cool thing we want to build. But we have to make a choice one way or the other so we don't go to jail.
Yeah, you don't want to have like regulatory action by SWAT team.
Right, exactly. Like, we don't want our door kicked in. We want to keep building this thing in some version. Like, maybe it's not quite the version we had in mind, but like we want to build some version of it, and we want to be able to help rather than sit in jail. And so, like, for all the people out there that yell about, just tell them to go fuck off and like do whatever you want. Like, it doesn't technically work like that. Like, yes, some things, you have to be very, very careful about where you apply that sort of force. And if you want a system that's going to be for normal people to use, and you want it to be super easy and really approachable and easy to understand, like, you're going to have to swallow some of those bitter pills. Like, it's just a fact. And so I don't, like, again, like, I don't look at that and go, oh, like, Million has failed us. Like, Primal is such a bad tool. I just go, it's a certain type of tool for a certain type of user. And if you're the type of user that you really hate KYC, there's plenty of other tools over here for you. Like, and that's the beauty of Noster, is we have the choice.
Yeah, the beauty of Noster is you can literally leave and
Exactly.
just choose a different tool, and I will still see your notes, and I could still
Exactly
engage with your notes. And like, yeah, and the negative is, and this is one of the reasons why I've been so focused on OpenSats, is the negative is there aren't really tools that work as well. I had like a full dev team, like Nostra Dev Illuminati dispatch with Fiat Jeff and Pablo.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, and Hodlbot, I was like,
yeah.
I was like, I think Primal is the best place for someone to start. Like, okay, do you guys have a response to that? And they're like, yeah, no, Primal's the best place to start.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's like, we just don't, like, it works. It works really well.
Turns out it's really hard to build software that's beautiful and easy to use. Like, it's really, really fucking hard.
It's a difficult problem to solve.
Yeah. So, like, again, I mean, I think, again, you're taking trade-offs, right? Like, and this is the reason that, like, most people don't use, Lightning in a non-custodial way. Most people don't, want to have to figure out, like, how do Bitcoin transactions work? Like, they only do these things when they really, really need to. And that's why you see most of the adoption on a lot of this stuff from places that don't have a functioning, finance system. Because if you've grown up with, PayPal is even a pile of crap, but like, it still functions.
It's so bad.
Yeah, it's terrible. But like, if you grew up with Venmo and PayPal and like Revolut, and you're like, oh yeah, I just make instant transactions between my bank accounts and it's fine. It's no big deal. Like, you don't see the need. And so it's the same, in this sort of situation. It's like, if you're expecting to have a consumer grade experience with this new social media thing that people are trying to get you to use, and then you try to use it and it's like 20 minutes of pain and suffering and you still have no idea what the fuck is going on, like, you're never going to look at it again. Or maybe it'll, if it's super successful, you'll bump into it years later and you'll be like, oh yeah, I tried this way back in the day and like couldn't figure anything out. Now it looks a little bit better.
What do you think about, and this is something I've wrestled with in Bitcoin land for a while, but now in Nostra land as well, specifically with Primal, this idea of mainstream adoption versus fuck you, only the ride or dies matter, which I kind of did adopt because I just deleted my Twitter.
Exactly.
Like, Noster's only ride or dies. But
yeah,
should Noster only focus on the ride or dies, or should we be focused on trying to get new users? Because, I mean, I think that solves it. If you agree that only the ride or dies matter, then we don't even need Primal as a client. Because clearly Primal is trying to solve the TikTok user or the LinkedIn user like you, or the Twitter user. They're trying to solve that problem where, like, Milan's trying to solve that problem where, like, you're comparing it to traditional social networks and bring it in. I see Pablo. Pablo, you should just
fighting the good fight over here.
Pablo, by the way, you're welcome to join every single Silo Dispatch. It doesn't matter what we're talking about. We could be talking about like whales. I won't have a dispatch about whales, but if we hypothetically had a dispatch about whales and I only had whale experts on, you're still welcome to join. But he's saying false dichotomy, massive false dichotomy. Of course, don't have to choose.
I mean, it is a false dichotomy, but at the same time, I get the angle of the question, which is, like, is our job to try to convince the entire world that we're right and that they should come over and join us? Or should we just be like, nah, we're cool, we got our own thing, and we can just move on with our, we'll just be over here doing our thing. And I think the unfortunate fact is that they're not going to leave us alone. Like, they're not going to let us do what we want to do. If I thought that was the case, I would definitely be in the second camp, and I'd be like, no, we're all moving to wherever it is, Madeira or Costa Rica, and we're all just going to chill together, and they're literally going to leave us the fuck alone. I would pick up and move the family immediately. But like, it's just not the world we live in. And so I think more and more we've benefited from flying under the radar for many years here. And I think that's given us enough time to build something that's effectively unstoppable, hopefully. But we're in a situation now where we're going to have to interface with a large chunk of the world if we want to continue to, be able to do the things we want to do. And to some degree, that is going to require us to, if not get everybody on board, at least get them to recognize that, like, this is a reasonable thing to do and a reasonable thing to want to work on. And, there's no reason to stop it. And so it's not that we have to convince everybody to join and get everybody to quit TikTok and Twitter. But it is like really, really important that we like know that the game we're playing and like know that it's not just what we want to do that matters. Like, they can make things very, very uncomfortable. They can't ban it. They can't totally stop it. They'll never be able to, but they can definitely make things uncomfortable.
Jeff, who is they?
Yeah, all of them. The people that, mostly the U.S. government, let's be honest.
Okay.
Mostly the U.S. government and the European government and all of the international agencies that are in their pockets.
I agree.
Like, they benefit from all of this, right? Like, they benefit from all the hegemony. They benefit from all of everything. Are they still talking about whales?
Yeah, the live chat is we will now have a Civil Dispatch focus on whales, and I think Pablo is joining for it.
Excellent. Whalester.
I mean, honestly,
we've got a new client. Whalester's on the way.
Like, if you don't care about whales, do you even care? Like, what? Like, I think
Also true.
whales. Like, if you talk about like foundational elements of society, I think whales are like the base of all society. Was built on top of whale law.
I mean, they are big. Yeah.
They are large. They're large. They're large creatures. I mean, the live chat is what makes this show special. So shout out to the freaks who join us in the live chat. By the way, I think we're nearly about to wrap up, but if you're watching this through Twitter or YouTube, the real live chat is at saildispatch.com/stream, powered by Zapstream, which requires a Noster account, but you can create one in the browser. So you don't even have to know what Noster is. And it just fucking works.
Back to those disposable npubs.
Yeah, disposable npubs. I think there's a weird. So I have a hard question for you, Jeff.
Okay.
Since honestly, like, you really failed on the hard question.
Look,
like,
you sprung it on me. Okay.
Yeah,
you sprung it on me. I don't actually know you that well either, so it's like not even. How am I going to?
Well, we're like, we have friends of friends.
We
like,
do have friends of friends.
We're friends.
I should have known better.
Yeah, we're basically like way closer than Kevin Bacon's system or whatever. 6
very,
degrees.
Very much so.
We're 1 degree. We're 1 degree friends.
1 degree from multiple angles. You're totally correct.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Like,
when we meet in person,
we're basically best friends.
I will come with a very, very hard question for you.
We're basically best friends. I have a hard question for you. So Carnage had a great post. Shout out Carnage. About Noster. How will people react when the big megacorps start monetizing our data? I think it's inevitable. Like, I think, and it's weird that I'm asking you the hard question, I'm answering it, but I'm going to answer it. I think it's inevitable. Like, I think the most monetizable data set in the world is going to be Noster posts. It's going to be signed Noster posts in the age of AI, like cryptographically verifiable proofs of what you think are going to be the most monetizable things in the world, and it's broadcast to the world and you have easy access to it. It's not closed behind walled gardens of X or LinkedIn or Reddit. Every single centralized platform except for TikTok right now is closing their doors and making sure that people don't have access to it. And
Right.
TikTok has the additional benefit that the CCP is trying to boost adoption.
Right.
How do you think about that? Like, what is your opinion on megacorps monetizing Nostra data?
Well, megacorps are going to megacorp. Like, they're definitely going to do it 100%. Like, that's not even a question in my mind. They probably, I mean, we're still small. So that would be the only reason I would say they probably haven't gotten there yet, is just because they're like, oh, there's this thing we should try to mess with, tomorrow or next week or whatever, but no one's gotten there yet. But, I mean, it's going to happen. And I think like that's a good reason for everybody on Noster now to be, thinking a little bit about, what is it that they're putting out there in the world, and how are they doing it? Back to our earlier thing, like, you only have privacy if you keep privacy, and you don't just immediately, live completely in the, public sphere. So I guess it doesn't really necessarily bother me. I guess the only thing that really bothers me about it is that, like, those large platforms and those megacorps are megacorps because they are toll booths. All the whole of Web 2 was literally built on this idea that, we're going to aggregate audiences, then we're going to build a choke point, and we're going to just monetize like crazy on that choke point. And we're the only ones that are, have that availability. And I feel like this is another one of those situations where we're providing them with tons and tons of data that they can then aggregate. And then they're going to build a toll booth stop. They're going to build a checkpoint. They're going to build a choke point again to say, okay, you advertisers, you want to be able to advertise to these people. Well, we figured out how to get to them. We've built these special bots that operate on Noster and, X, Y, and Z. I guess the one thing that I have hope on that whole situation there is that we still have total control to build whatever we want on Noster. And so it's not like Google, where you want to get the benefit, you're going to have to look at the ads, or Facebook, where they're just going to mix it in, to all the stuff with your friends. You have total freedom to switch to whatever client you want. You have total freedom to use whatever tool you want. Your identity and your data can go wherever you would like it to go. But that data, if you leave it public, is definitely going to be used in the public sphere as publicly open data.
Yeah, damn right. Like, that's the argument. 100% the argument. The argument is you're going to monetize me regardless. So I'm just going to allow anyone to monetize me.
And also,
you
and I
have
don't
all
to
the
deal with
data.
Yeah.
It's cryptographically signed, monetize at will.
Yes. Monetize at will, but also, like, I don't have to also look at whatever you're doing. I don't have to suffer, using your shitty products with all of your ads because, you've taken this data. And I think, honestly, like, that probably sort of breaks the toll booth model, because if they don't have you captured there, then them having information about, you through your posts doesn't really make it easy for them to, make a case to their customers that, like, hey, you want to advertise with us because, we can advertise to these people. No, you actually can't. Like, they can just as easily leave and never see your posts.
Yeah. Like some random schmuck in Thailand can have the same exact data.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
You're missing the point. The point. I'm coming out.
Harry's getting involved.
Good. I like this.
Why is Harry getting involved?
You're missing the point. So the other component is that it's not just about the social graph user map data. It's the combination of the social graph user map data with the algorithm in order to reserve the same user base back to itself, right? You have to human centipede the social platform in order to monetize the data properly, because really it's not just the ass where the data comes out. You got to give it back to the mouth where you actually monetize it again.
Yes, but the only way to monetize that data is if you, as a user, are forced to go through their platform for one reason or another, right? Like, you've got, I mean, in Google's case, like, you want to use Google Search, you want to use Google Maps, you want to use Gmail, you're going to see their ads. You want to see what your grandma is saying, you're going to go to Facebook. You want to, like, you know what I mean? Like, the only reason they've got the captive audience to show that stuff back to and force feed us is because we're stuck and we can't leave. Yeah. And so I think that's the piece that Noster breaks apart.
Totally agree. But I think, like, the critical piece is, like, the product is fused into the monetization mechanism. It's not just the user data that informs the monetization. It's the decoupling.
Right. I think we're saying the same thing.
I agree with you.
Okay, excellent. I'm glad we had this talk.
Awesome.
Sorry.
No, that was great. Love it.
Let the record show that I flipped my ear cup and then rested it against his ear so that he could hear your response.
Very good.
I have one more question for you, Jeff, and then we'll wrap it and we'll ask you for your final thoughts. Pablo said in the comments, you're not asking the hard questions. You didn't ask him about Fetty. Do you know what that means? Do you want to ask me?
Tell me about what you think about Fetty.
I mean, that's
okay. I don't see. This isn't really a hard. Okay, maybe this is a hard question for you. Tell me what you think about eCash. Is it both Fetty and Cashew? Are they useful things that people should be spending time on, or do you think they're distractions?
I think they're incredibly useful.
Okay, I don't know what Pablo's going with that one.
You have nothing else?
Do you not like Fetty for some reason?
No, I mean, we're first of all, 1031 is investors in Fetty.
In regards to issuing money, and
so I thought it had something to do with that.
Well, I mean,
are you're gonna wait for Pablo to tell you what
what's
you
CJing? Oh, like them just being fucked in the sense. Okay, yeah, okay, I get it. What do you think is going to happen to Fetty? Like, do you think they're going to be able to find a way around this current situation? Or not?
I'm not going to speculate about portfolio companies and how they handle this regulatory environment on air. That would be dumb. That would be a stupid thing to do.
Yes.
I will say that I think Charming eCash is good for the world. I think Bitcoin-powered Charming eCash is a powerful force for good in the world.
I agree.
And I will say that from the very early days, before Fetty existed as a company, before Immunity existed as a company, I thought that was the case. I think our Citadel Dispatch with Eric Sirion, and I say our as in me, my Citadel Dispatch with Eric Sirion was a pivotal point in terms of the eCash development. And I think it's fucking awesome. Like, it's just great. And I think it's really cool how you can like link shit to NPubs and you can do like native shit. There's like a bunch of like, I think the closest thing to like native Noster payments is eCash.
Yes.
The problem is obviously like who is the custodians? Like who is like handling that shit? I think that's where Fediment is really interesting. I will say 1031 has given no strings attached grants to both Fediment and Cali, for Fediment and Cashew, where they were in investments. Like we just took a portion of management fees and we gave grants towards them because we think it's better for all of us. And like it's not just altruism reason. We think it benefits the whole ecosystem, and we think it benefits our quote unquote investments. And so when I say to Sailor, like, why aren't you supporting open source contributors? I can also say, I do from my pocket, right? Like I actually practice what I preach. I'm not just, just some random ass fucking board member that makes no money. That's just like preaching quote unquote communism or whatever he wants to pretend it is. So that's where we are right now. But I would say that like eCash is massive. Like anyone who's sleeping on eCash they're missing out. They're missing out. Like the development that Cali's doing, the development that the Fediment open source contributors are doing is fucking massive. The aspect of like creating the federated eCash is actually really fucking complicated.
Yes.
Like I don't think people realize how complicated it is, which is one of the reasons why Cashew has been able to develop so quickly. But it's awesome because we do need it right now. But I think really the future is federated eCash. I think the future is multi-sig, sovereign banks essentially that cannot see what their account holders are doing. And that is what Fediment is. Like that's like suit lingo for what Fediment is. It's like,
well, but it's also exactly what Cashew is, right? Like, I mean, just add a multi-sig, and it's not as quite the same as a federation, but it's it is similar. And they are banks, and like that's the thing. It's this is, I think the scariest thing right now is that, yes, I agree with all those statements that it's fucking amazing and it's the future and all that. And I think it's also the most at risk part of the ecosystem at the moment.
And also, like, God bless the people that run them, because it's like, even if you are, if you're, everyone always focuses on like the bad actors, right? They're like, oh, like if you're a bad actor, you can just rug a Cashew man. Well, what about the good actors? Like the good actors have massive mental burden, massive economic burden.
Right.
Like there's a real burden on these people. If it's a single sig, if it's a Cashew fucking mint, fucking substantial, like significant.
Scary.
If it's a Fediment, it's still substantial, but it's a little bit less so because maybe it's a 3 or 5, maybe it's a 2 or 3, whatever it is. It's substantial, and like people just assume like other people will operate that for them. And I would say to you, be the change you want to see in the world. Like it's fucking ridiculous. But I do think that's probably where we're heading. You don't have to, it doesn't require protocol changes, which is key. I've been in Bitcoin long enough where I just don't assume protocol changes. People think like, oh, that's the guy that supports open source contributors. Like he just like believes in soft forks left and right. It's like, no, I don't. I know there's a lot of work that doesn't involve soft forks. I actually do not support soft forks for most situations. I think we should be slow and steady about it. But yeah,
there's a whole lot we can do without a soft fork with eCash. So
yeah, man, but it's a shit ton of liability for the people that run that shit. So like, just have a little respect.
Several directions. Like it's not just the liability of like, don't mess it up and lose people's money. It's like a bunch of other liability that we're seeing the sharp end of recently.
Exactly. Yeah. But I think Fedimints are particularly cool because you have this like multi-sig element to it, right? Like it's not just a single person, and it shouldn't be. It really, like if we can avoid it, it shouldn't be a single person. And I don't think Callie necessarily disagrees with that.
No,
I think he just realizes that it's way easier to develop if you just exclude that variable.
Yes.
And he just pushes forward. And I respect the fact that he pushes forward. And I would say like all it takes is like we could fund 1,000 developers through OpenSats. Maybe that's bearish. Maybe we fund 10,000 developers through OpenSats. But all it takes is like 5 or 6 people. Like it's 5 or 6 of those people that actually like get shit done and like push through changes that matter to the world. And if those 5 or 6 people get funded and supported and have backing, then our grandchildren live in a way, way, way better world than we currently live in today. And that's why I'm focused on OpenSats.
Yeah. Yep. Makes total sense.
Damn right, Jeff. You're horrible at asking hard questions.
I know. I'll work on it.
You've been a great guest. You've been a great guest. Jeff, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap?
I'm really interested to hear the whale episode with Pablo. I mean, he has told me in private, maybe I shouldn't dox this, but he's told me he knows quite a few whale calls. So make sure to ask him about that when he gets on the call. Okay. No, really, like actual final thoughts. Do
you have any? Do you want contributors or something to all the amazing open source projects you're working on? Like, what do you?
Yes, absolutely. Like one, I've been a horrible absentee landlord on Noster.how. I think that is, like we talked about before, great. It gets a lot of traffic. It is totally meant to help, new people to Noster just do it easier and better. I want to have it in a ton of languages. I think it's in like 8 or 9 languages already, but I'd love more. And I would also just love more content there. So if you're non-technical and you're looking for a place to help, like, please, that's a great place. I think, and as well, like, anybody that is wanting to get into it with on the DM stuff, I'm like actively looking for people to come and poke holes in this, because again, like I said, I hope this is used in really high stakes environments eventually. And I want it to be super, super secure and, be something that we can set one time and be like, all right, we figured this out. We're done with this section. We can move on to the next thing. We don't have to think about DMs anymore, at least for a while.
Fuck yes. Well, Jeff, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Say something.
Well, I was about to say something and I looked over and I was like, Noster.how is in Rust? No, it's not written in Rust.
I just wanted to thank the freaks for joining us in the live chat. As always.
Yeah.
All the links are still dispatch.com. But the live chat freaks are the ones who make this show run. You guys are the hosts alongside me. And if you listen to any Civil Dispatch, you'd realize that is truly the case, because I read every single post you post, and I don't moderate any of this shit. So thank you. I also wanted to obviously thank the freaks who support the show with sats, with Bitcoin. We don't have any sponsors, so unlike other Bitcoin shows, I don't just like randomly support whoever pays me the most money. I like ride or die with them till the end, to who I agree with, to who I think is the best product. And I might be fucking wrong, but at least I fucking go with the guys that I think are providing a solid product. Not on Dispatch, but on RHR we do have sponsors, but I try and focus on the good sponsors. But the point is, Dispatch has no sponsors. Thank you for supporting us with Bitcoin. We have Nat Gas Immersion with 100k sats, and we have at Gunnerson, or Gunson. What is it? It's coming around. It's coming around. Let's wait for it to come around.
Where is it coming?
We have Nat Gas
spinning around at the bottom.
Immersion, yeah, with 100k sats, and we have at Gunson with 121,000 sats. Thank you, freaks, for supporting us. But I know sats are scarce. If you can't support us that way, share with friends and family. We're on every podcast app. We're on YouTube until we get banned. We're on Twitter until we get banned. I should probably just get rid of the Twitter. And no one really engages with it. But I deleted my personal Twitter account. I felt like it was enough. But maybe I'll delete that Twitter account. But we're on YouTube. You just search YouTube. Keep in mind, YouTube does hit me with copyright violations very often. So you will not get the music video that's about to play. Jeff, thank you for joining.
Thank you so much. It's been great fun.
Did you enjoy it? Was it fun?
I did. I can't wait for the next round.
That's awesome. We're going to be talking about tomorrow at 1700 UTC. We're going to be talking about Bitcoin design with the Bitcoin Design Foundation. They're trying to get their legs off their. They're trying to make shit happen over there in Bitcoin design, which is hard. It's hard enough in open source development. It's even harder in design. No one really gives a shit about design. We're going to make it sexy. We're going to make it exciting. We're going to have a fun conversation. Join us tomorrow at 1700 UTC. And then I have Matt from Start 9, Start OS. We're going to be talking about Start OS, self-hosting, all that stuff at 1700 UTC next Friday. And I'm going to be traveling, visiting my grandma, my son's great-grandmother. And we're going to have a fun time. Jeff.
Amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
You're welcome, man. Thank you for all you do.
Keep pushing. Appreciate you. Peace.
See ya.
Love you, freaks. That was Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young at Wembley in London, 1974. Pretty crazy. A little time capsule into the past. I'll see you freaks tomorrow, 1700 UTC. For you American freaks, that's 1 p.m. Eastern, noon Central. It'll be a fun time. Jeff was fucking awesome. I hope you enjoyed it. And keep pushing forward. Stay humble, stacks out.